Hello there and welcome to our nightly news program coming to you live on All 24 News from Algiers. Coming up next. Algerian president receives a phone call from his Syrian counterpart who briefed President Tebboune on this situation in Syria and the events taking place around it. Also coming up, oil price surges to near $86 a barrel after world's largest producers announced a surprise cut in production. Also ahead, former President Donald Trump arrives in New York ahead of his scheduled indictment related to hush money charges. And Burkina Faso's military denies responsibility for the killings of 16-year-old boy Adama and 6 other boys. Hello again and welcome to the program. First off in our news, Algerian President Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune received on Monday a phone call from his Syrian counterpart Bashar al-Assad, who presented his congratulations and those of the Syrian people on the occasion of the holy month of Ramadan. A statement of the Algerian presidency said that the occasion provided an opportunity for the Syrian president to brief President Tebboune on the situation in Syria and the events taking place around it. The same source stated that the two presidents exchanged views on the strong and solid bilateral relations between the two countries. Still with Algeria-related news, Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf reviewed with his French counterpart Catherine Colonna ways to strengthen Algerian-French relations in the context of the agreed bilateral benefits, especially the expected state visit of Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune to France. A statement by the Algerian Foreign Ministry said that the two ministers, Attaf and Colonna, assessed during a phone call that brought them together on Sunday the progress made in handling the major files that are supposed to form the essence of this visit. They also affirmed the appointment of contact points to ensure the coordination of bilateral cooperation in various sectors of endeavor in embodiment of what was concluded in the Algiers Declaration for Renewed Partnership between Algeria and France. To a different development now, OPEC Plus oil producers announced additionally oil production cut of around 1.16 million barrels per day as of next May. In coordination with some of OPEC countries, Algeria confirmed it will voluntarily reduce its oil production by 48 barrels per day, starting from May until the end of 2023 as a preemptive measure to support the market in this critical period. Zara Ferjani reports.
OPEC Plus countries voluntarily cut oil production by 1.16 million barrels per day, a decision seen by oil experts as a step to stabilize oil markets and a proactive precautionary measure because it contributes to creating a balance between supply and demand, especially with the state of uncertainty related to the global economy.
We discussed reports about the global petroleum market. In this period, we agreed that global economic growth is slow, so the demand for petroleum products was proceeding normally and voluntarily for all OPEC and non-OPEC countries to reduce the production by a total of 1.16 million barrels per day, in addition to a reduction of 2 million barrels, which we decided in October.
As part of this aforementioned decision of oil output cut, Algeria confirmed it will voluntarily reduce its production between the months of May and December by an additional volume of 48,000 barrels per day.
For Algeria, the voluntary reduction will be 48,000 barrels per day, and we have decided that we will continue our meeting between OPEC and non-OPEC countries, as the next meeting will be on June 4th, to put all these measures as part of the study between OPEC and non-OPEC countries in order to make other appropriate decisions for this period.
The OPEC Plus oil cuts, which will start in May and last through the end of the year, is believed to be a positive step to give the market more support and stability during the coming period, which analysts describe as critical.
In related news, the oil price surged to near $86 a barrel after the world's largest producers announced a surprise cut in production, a move that is likely to prompt fresh tensions with the US as Western governments try to get a grip on inflation. Here's Osama Ayadi in this report.
Just as OPEC Plus group decided to cut oil production, oil prices jumped by about 7% before the decrease in their gains later in the beginning of the week's trading, supported by the announcement of a voluntary cut in oil production by OPEC Plus. The OPEC Plus group, which consists of the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries and allies, including Russia, said on Sunday they would reduce production by a further 1.16 million barrels per day from next month. The additional reduction is precautionary and aimed at achieving stability in the global oil market.
The primary role of OPEC is to balance supply and demand, really on supply side micromanagement. They want to make sure they don't flood the market with oil, that they deliver the marginal barrel, and that they're able to balance the two, both supply and demand, to achieve a targeted price.
The Biden administration revealed that it was already notified of the move by the producers, considering the cuts not advisable.
We don't think that production cuts are advisable at this moment, given the market uncertainty, and we made that clear. But I'll tell you, we're focused on moving ahead here, on prices for American consumers, not barrels. And I think, as you know, prices at the pump have come down significantly since last year. We're also just in a different place in the market than we were last year.
On the other hand, the Russian presidency defended the decision and confirmed that the reduction of production is in the interest of global markets, regardless of the positions of some consuming countries and critics of the decision of the OPEC Plus coalition. Analysts believe that China's growing demand for oil and its special relationship with Russia definitely played a role in OPEC's decision-making process. Nevertheless, some other energy-dependent economies in Asia, such as Singapore, will be especially vulnerable to the output cuts.
The China-Russia special relationship, it transcends oil prices. Oil prices are a very important component. The relationship, China, the world's biggest importer, and soon to be in a few years the biggest consumer of petroleum. That's somebody good to have in your corner if you're a country like Russia facing the fallout from the Ukraine invasion, the sanctions and all that.
The OPEC Plus had been expected to maintain its earlier decision to cut output by 2 million barrels per day until December at its monthly meeting on Monday. The pledges bring the total volume of cuts by OPEC Plus to 3.66 million barrels per day, or equal to 3.7% of global demand.
With economy news still, the Saudi daily business newspaper Al-Iqtisadiyya ranked the Algerian dinar among the most valuable currencies during the past year. Data reported by the Saudi newspaper, which specializes in economic affairs, showed that the Algerian dinar has risen by more than 8% over the past year, which places it at the forefront of the most valuable currencies against the US dollar. The report relies on exchange rates in the official market in the country, while the currencies of many Arab countries are witnessing significant declines in the parallel market. To some regional news now, Sahrawi activists launched a massive campaign against the Mahsen regime's continued plundering of the wealth of the Sahrawis as a matter of investing in renewable energies. After expelling the population and forcibly stealing their lands, Rabat proceeds with its alleged energy project by luring foreign companies disregarding international laws.
For us as Sahrawis, we condemn the systematic violation which extorts the sources of the Sahrawi people, and we call on all the companies to withdraw from these lands where projects are taking place, because they are lands owned by the Sahrawi people, and they were taken by the Moroccan forces and gave them to the foreign companies without agreement of the Sahrawi people.
Still in Africa, Tunisian President Mr. Kais Saied gave instructions to initiate the procedures for appointing the Tunisian ambassador to Damascus. This came during Saied's meeting with Tunisian Foreign Minister Nabil Amar on Monday. During the meeting, the president stressed the need to adhere to the foreign policy principles of Tunisian diplomacy, according to the Tunisian presidency's statement, which added that among the most important of these principles is non-involvement in the independence of the national decision. President Said also stressed, according to the same source, that Tunisia's positions abroad stem from the will of its people. And in different news, Tunisian President Kais Saied denied rumors of being seriously ill on Monday, stating that any suggestion he might have to step down due to health problems was completely crazy. Saied declared that it was wrong to allege that there would be a vacancy in presidency. He made the remarks following a meeting with his Prime Minister Najla Bouden.
Coordination is continuing between the government's institutions, contrastingly to all what is being said as an extreme degree of craziness, which has never been seen in Tunisia. They are talking about one of the situations of vacancy, because their goal is vacancy.
Following the United Nations Human Rights Council's decision to renew the mandate of the Commission on Human Rights in South Sudan, Tigray Chakuda, Amnesty International's acting regional director for East and Southern Africa, said the Commission found that although the government of South Sudan has announced special investigation committees into several situations, not one has led to any form of accountability. Numerous government and military officials have been implicated in abuses against the people in South Sudan. The United Nations Human Rights Council announced that measures need to be taken in the country to end impunity and enforce accountability after several violations of human rights. Burkina Faso's military has denied responsibility for the killings of 16-year-old boy Adama and 6 other boys after an 83-second video was released which showed the military of Burkina Faso filming the death of the young boy along with the 6 other boys. For several years, Burkina Faso has been living a severe security situation as many terrorist groups still take control in many areas and spread violence in every possible occasion.
On est inquiet par rapport à la question.
We're concerned by the security issue, which is affecting children. The abduction of children during sweep operation by some men in the security forces is not new. These are things that happen from time to time. It happened that children were abducted while tending to cattle, and they were taken to the high security prison. Children who are about 10 years old. This is a practice to be corrected and worked on to be minimized.
To the Middle East now, 2 Palestinian youths have been killed by Zionist forces during a military raid into the occupied West Bank city of Nablus. Meanwhile, 2 other Palestinians were detained by the Zionist occupation and dozens of others were suffocated by tear gas bombs fired at them by occupation forces. Here's Islam Sid.
Zionist forces shot 2 Palestinians on Monday during military raid in Nablus in the occupied West Bank. The 2 young men were pronounced dead due to severe wounds after being taken to hospital. The Zionist soldiers also used toxic gas bombs and dogs during the raid, which resulted in 55 Palestinians getting suffocated due to inhaling tear gas bombs fired at them. Meanwhile, the Zionist forces arrested 2 other Palestinians and stormed several areas in the city. Palestinian presidency condemned the crime and held the occupation accountable for these attacks, calling on the international community to intervene to put pressure on Netanyahu's government to stop its violations against Palestinian population.
The continuation of the Israeli occupation authorities' unilateral measures of settlement, killings, and incursions into the blessed Aqsa Mosque confirm that they are striving to escalate the situation, tense the atmosphere, and drag the region into a spiral of violence and instability.
For his part, Prime Minister Mohammed Shtia condemned the killing and offered his deepest condolences to the families of the 2 martyrs.
The killings and crimes committed by the occupation soldiers and settlers do not stop until they start again. Policy embraced by murderers, criminals.
The 2 martyrs are added to the 94 Palestinians who have been killed by Zionist occupation, who keep defying human rights and international law by brutally killing even children and women.
To the latest on the Russia-Ukraine file now, Russia accused Ukraine of organizing the murder of Vladlen Tatarsky and arrested a young Russian woman who was shown in a police interrogation video admitting to planting the bomb that killed him and injured over 30 others. The report is signed by Sofian Kinturi.
Russia's investigative committee said that Daria Tripova, a suspect in the killing of war blogger Vladlen Tatarsky in a St. Petersburg blast on Sunday, had been detained. The woman is injured due to the explosives and currently under control of Russian police.
The Russian Investigative Committee, in cooperation with police, detained Daria Tripova on suspicion of being involved with the explosion in a cafe in St. Petersburg. The necessary investigative procedures are now being carried out with her. We're trying to identify the motive of the crime. Investigators will decide on the form of detention for her.
The 26-year-old Russian woman confessed in a video released by the Interior Ministry that she had brought in the figurine of likeness of Tatarsky that exploded shortly afterwards and killed him.
Do you understand why you were detained? What for?
For being at a place where Vladlen Tatarsky was killed.
What did you do?
I took the statuette there that exploded.
Who gave you that statuette?
Can I tell you later?
For its part, Russia's National Anti-Terrorism Committee accused Ukrainian intelligence services of being behind this blast and called it a terrorist attack.
According to the National Anti-Terrorism Committee, there is information indicating that the Ukrainian special services may be involved in the planning of this terrorist act, and naturally, this is a terrorist act. Of course, we wish a speedy recovery to those who suffered in this terrorist act, and we offer our condolences to the family and friends of Vladlen Tatarsky, who died as a result of this terrorist act.
Russian investigators say that the Interior Ministry placed Tripova on its wanted list from the beginning because she had previously been detained for protesting against the Russian actions in Ukraine. This is the second assassination on Russian soil of a figure closely associated with the conflict. According to the Kremlin, the investigations are underway to confirm that this act was prepared by the so-called the Kiev regime.
And in related news, Kiev scorned Russian claims to have captured eastern Bakhmut on Monday, saying that Ukrainian forces had repelled nearly 20 attacks along the city's front line in the last 24 hours. Meanwhile, head of the Russian Wagner force spearheading the siege said on Sunday his troops had raised a Russian flag on the city center administrative building, even though Ukrainian soldiers still held some Western positions.
They attached their flag to the side of who knows what, hanged their rag, and said they captured the city. Well, good. Let them think they have taken it. Bakhmut is Ukrainian, and they have not captured anything, and they are very far from doing that.
Finland will join NATO on Tuesday, marking the completion of a swift journey into the military alliance for the Nordic nation following Russia's military operation in Ukraine. Finland has a 1,300-kilometer border with Russia, meaning NATO's frontier with Russia will roughly double in length, and the move drew a pledge from Moscow that it will beef up its forces in border regions.
This is a historic week. Tomorrow we will welcome Finland as the 31st member of NATO, making Finland safer and our alliance stronger.
Former Kosovo President Hashim Thaçi and 3 other co-defendants are charged with crimes against humanity and war crimes that took place during armed conflict against Serbian forces. Former Kosovo President pleaded not guilty on Monday at the Kosovo Specialist Chambers in The Hague, Netherlands. More details with Selma Nasib.
Former Kosovo President Hashim Thaçi pleaded not guilty on Monday to all 10 accounts and charges against him as his war crimes trial opened at a special court in The Hague in Western Netherlands, including other former high-ranking members of the Kosovo Liberation Army, as they've been all accused for the killings of many civilians during the 1998 and 1999 uprising against Serbian rule when he was a guerrilla commander.
You pleaded not guilty to all counts of the confirmed indictment. You now have the opportunity to confirm this plea. Do you confirm your initial plea of not guilty?
Yes.
Hashim Thaçi served as president from 2016 until the tribunal issued a war crimes indictment against him in November 2020, prompting him to resign as president following 4 years in office and his transfer to the tribunal's detention center in The Hague. However, prosecutors claim that they are responsible for crimes committed by Kosovo Liberation Army guerrillas against hundreds of civilians and other people who were not taking part in the fighting, as the trial started Monday with an opening statement by the prosecution and lawyers for victims.
There can be no justification, and there is no justification for arbitrarily detaining civilians and persons out of combat and subjecting them to abuse, torture, and murder. That is against the law, and that is why the prosecution brought this case, to vindicate the rule of law and the principle that nobody is above the law, even during wartime.
As for people in Pristina expressed disapproval as Kosovo's former president went on trial in The Hague, and many of them believe that the tribunal is biased.
They are not condemning these people, but they are condemning the effort, the war that the whole world supported.
It's worth noting that Thaçi's case has stimulated an outpouring support from across the political spectrum in Kosovo, as earlier thousands of people took to the streets to show their support for the defendants.
China's foreign ministry on Monday said that the main reason behind tensions on the Korean peninsula are joint military drills being held by South Korea, the United States, and Japan, as the three countries last held trilateral anti-submarine drills in September, the first time in 5 years amid tension over North Korea's unprecedented number of missile tests. For its part, South Korea's defense ministry said the navies of South Korea, the US, and Japan will hold 2 days of anti-submarine exercises starting Monday to better counter North Korea's evolving nuclear and missile capabilities. To the US now, former President Donald Trump arrived at Trump Tower in New York on Monday ahead of his scheduled arraignment related to hush money charges. Former US President Donald Trump left Florida for New York City. The state increased security and warned potential protesters of taking to the streets. Trump is facing other multiple charges of falsifying business records, including at least one felony offense in the indictment handed down by a Manhattan grand jury last week.
Mr. Trump will be brought to the courthouse on the 15th floor of the criminal court in Manhattan, and he will appear in front of a judge who will then tell him what the charges are against him, ask him how he pleads, and will set, in this case, there will certainly be no bail, and so he will release the former president on his own recognizance and will set some schedule for the next court appearance and potentially for discovery and for motion practice. And that's fairly typical. Of course, in some ways, this is a first of its kind. There will be a Secret Service detail. There will be a lot of security and law enforcement presence to make sure that there is no violence and no disruptions.
In the U.S. still, Nashville area school students have planned to walk out of their classes on Monday to call for stronger gun safety laws in the United States following the bloodshed that occurred at local private elementary school in Nashville. According to local reports, the planned march is taking place at around 10 a.m. The same time, authorities said the shooter arrived at the school and opened fire, leaving 3 students and 3 adults dead. Malaysia's parliament on Monday passed extensive legal transformations to take away the mandatory death penalty. It reduces number of offences punishable by death and abolishes life prison sentences. Whipping and imprisonment of between 30 to 40 years are included as alternatives to death penalty. The new jail term will replace all previous provisions that call for imprisonment for the duration of the offender's life.
Hukuman mati mandatory dilihat sebagai langkah yang tepat dalam usaha kerajaan.
And for more stories making headlines around the globe, here's the news in brief.
At least 20 people were killed and several others are missing after a landslide in East Democratic Republic of Congo on Monday, where the bodies of 8 women and 13 children were discovered after the landslide hit a river in the locality in Boloa as people were washing clothes and cleaning kitchenware. According to Voltaire Batundi, a civil society leader in the wider Masisi territory.
Parisians voted against renewing the licenses of electric scooter operators in the city. 89% of the city's registered voters cast their ballots against electric scooters, making Paris the first European capital to completely ban such service.
According to officials and media reports, a violent storm pack in high winds and heavy rains ripped through sections of southwestern and midwestern United States as it headed east, leaving at least 22 dead and scores injured. NASA unveiled on Wednesday a prototype for the spacesuit that astronauts will near on the next mission to the moon, scheduled for 2025. Artemis 3 is expected to land astronauts, including the first woman, on the moon following 2 Artemis test missions.
And with this, our program ends. For more, our social media platforms and our website are under your service. Till next time, take care.